A single mom saved a girl being mocked at the restaurant. But what happened the next day no one could have imagined. She thought it was just a moment of kindness, defending a shy, trembling girl who couldn't stand up for herself. But when a black car pulled up to her tiny apartment the next morning, everything changed. The man who stepped out wasn't just anyone. He was the girl's billionaire father, and he'd been searching for her for years. Now, this single mum is caught in the middle of a family, broken by pride, secrets, and a love that never healed. But as old wounds reopen, something deeper starts to unfold, something that could change all their lives forever. What secret drove the daughter away? Why did the billionaire choose her, a stranger, to help bring his child back? And when kindness turns into destiny, will it save them all, or break them for good? Drop a comment below and share which part of the world you're tuning in from today. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more. The rain had been falling since late afternoon, turning the streets of Atlanta into long rivers of gold beneath the streetlights. Wind pushed at the windows of cars and shops, and puddles rippled with each passing tire. By the time Maya Jordan turned her old Toyota into the parking lot of Willow's Diner, the wipers were squealing from overuse. She was tired. Bone-deep tired. The kind of weariness that comes from working double shifts for too many months. But she couldn't bear the thought of going home to another night of cold leftovers. Her 9-year-old daughter, Grace, sat in the passenger seat, her dark curls tucked under a pink knit hat. "Mom, can we just go in?" she asked, her voice hopeful. "I'm starving." Maya smiled weakly. "All right, baby, just a quick dinner, then home and bed." They hurried inside, shaking off the rain. The diner smelled of frying bacon, maple syrup, and coffee, comforting scents that made the world feel a little less hard. The neon sign above the counter buzzed softly, and an old jukebox played a tune from the 80s that no one seemed to notice. A handful of customers sat scattered around. Near the back, a group of 4 young adults laughed too loudly, their fancy clothes out of place in the humble setting. And working behind the counter was a young woman in a faded blue uniform, trying her best to keep up with orders. Her name tag read Imani. Maya noticed her right away. The girl couldn't have been much older than 30, but there was something fragile about her, a hesitance in her movements, a nervous glance whenever she spoke. When she brought water to the noisy group, her hands trembled slightly. The tallest man in the group leaned back, smirking. "Maybe she's scared of her own voice," he said, loud enough for the whole diner to hear. "Come on, sweetheart, try saying it again without stuttering." The others laughed. Imani flushed bright red, her lips parting, but no words coming out. Maya felt the familiar spark in her chest, the one she tried to quiet in moments like this. She wanted to stay out of it, just eat dinner, keep her head down. But Grace was watching, eyes wide, and Maya had promised herself that her daughter would never grow up thinking silence was kindness. She stood. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor, turning every head in the room. "That's enough," Maya said, her voice steady but firm. "You've had your fun." The laughter faded. The tall man blinked, half amused, half annoyed. "Who are you supposed to be?" "Someone who doesn't like bullies," Maya said. "Apologize to her." For a moment, no one moved. The diner's hum seemed to pause. The clatter of dishes, the hiss of the grill, even the jukebox. Then, slowly, the man leaned forward, his smirk faltering. He muttered something under his breath and tossed a few bills on the table. "Come on," he told his friends. "This place is trash anyway." As they walked out, the bell over the door jingled, leaving behind a silence thick with surprise. Imani stood frozen, eyes wide and glassy. "You didn't have to—" she started, her stutter catching again. "Yes, I did," Maya said softly. She smiled. You didn't deserve that. Imani blinked hard, tears threatening. People usually just watch. Then they should be ashamed. Grace tugged at her mother's sleeve. Can we eat now, Mom? That broke the tension. Imani let out a shaky laugh, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Yeah, let's get you two fed. Dinner came quickly. Pancakes for Grace, grilled cheese for Maya. Imani brought their plates with a smile that looked new, as if it had been hiding for a long time. You've got a kind heart, Imani said quietly when she came to refill their water. Not many people stand up anymore. Maya shrugged. Sometimes all it takes is someone willing to say enough. Imani nodded, looking down. I used to believe that. Maya studied her. There was a heaviness behind her eyes, a story untold. You can believe it again, she said gently. Imani smiled faintly and turned back to her work. The rain slowed outside as the diner emptied. By closing time, it was only Maya, Grace, and Imani left. Grace had fallen asleep in the booth, her cheek pressed against her folded arms. I can't thank you enough, Imani said as she wiped down tables. That group comes in sometimes. They think it's funny to make me nervous. You shouldn't have to put up with that. I need the job, Imani admitted, twisting the rag in her hands. Rent's due and... She hesitated. And people already think I'm slow because of my stutter. Maya's heart ached. You're not slow. You're just human. Imani met her eyes, startled by the gentleness. You sound like my mum, she said quietly. She used to say that. Used to. She passed away a few years ago. After that, I kind of drifted. Maya hesitated. No family left? Imani shook her head. No one who wants me around. They talked for another hour, about work, life, and small dreams. Maya learned that Imani loved to sing but never did in public, and that she read children's books at night because they made her feel safe. When Maya finally stood to leave, Imani walked her to the door. Thank you again, Imani said. You didn't just help me tonight. You reminded me that people can still be kind. Maya smiled. Maybe that's what we're all here to do. Remind each other. They hugged briefly, a quiet moment between two tired women clinging to hope. Then Maya carried Grace to the car, the rain misting gently again. The next morning dawned grey, but calm. Maya's alarm buzzed at 6. She groaned, rolled out of bed, and brewed her usual cheap coffee. Grace wandered out of her room in a tangle of curls, rubbing her eyes. Mom, she said sleepily, you're on the internet. Maya frowned. What? Grace pointed at the tablet. A video played, a shaky phone recording from the diner. Maya's voice rang out clear. That's enough! You've had your fun, thousands of views, hundreds of comments. This woman gives me hope. We need more people like her. Faith in humanity restored. Oh, Lord, Maya whispered, pressing a hand to her forehead. What did I do? Grace giggled. You're famous! I don't want to be famous, Maya said, laughing weakly. I just wanted pancakes. Still, part of her felt something stir, a strange mix of pride and disbelief. For once, someone had noticed her doing something right. By mid-morning, her phone buzzed non-stop, messages from co-workers, friends, even strangers. But as she poured Grace's cereal, there came another sound, a firm knock on the apartment door. Maya froze. Through the peephole, she saw a man in a dark suit, standing perfectly straight despite the drizzle outside. A sleek, black car idled behind him, its engine humming softly. She cracked the door open. Can I help you? The man tipped his head politely. Ms. Jordan? Yes. My name is Marcus, he said, handing her a business card. I represent Mr. Richard Wells. He wishes to meet you. Maya glanced down at the card, Gold lettering, heavy paper. The name sounded familiar. She'd seen it on billboards, real estate signs, maybe even in the news. Why would someone like that want to meet me? Marcus smiled faintly. Because of what you did last night. Grace peeked from behind her mother's leg, eyes wide. Mom, is that a movie agent? Maya blinked, half laughing. No, honey, I don't think so. Marcus chuckled softly. Mr. Wells will explain everything himself, Ms. Jordan. He asked if you'd join him for coffee later today. Maya hesitated. I'm not sure. I assure you, this isn't about publicity. Marcus said. It's personal. He handed her a card with an address written neatly beneath the printed name. He'll be at the Magnolia Cafe at 11. After he left, Maya closed the door and stared at the card for a long time. Something about this didn't feel random, but there was no malice in the man's eyes, only a quiet urgency, like someone carrying a heavy secret. Grace tugged her sleeve. Are you going? Maya sighed. I guess I have to know why. As the clock ticked toward 11, Maya dressed carefully, her heart restless. She didn't know that the man she was about to meet, the billionaire behind the name on that card, wasn't a stranger at all to the young waitress whose life she'd changed the night before. And by the end of the day, kindness would no longer be just a small act. It would become the bridge between three broken hearts who had been waiting for Grace to find them again. The clouds over Atlanta thinned by morning, letting in pale streaks of sunlight that glinted off wet pavement and dripping rooftops. The rain had stopped sometime before dawn, but the city still smelled of damp concrete and brewing coffee. Inside her small apartment, Maya Jordan was trying to get Grace out the door for school. Shoes, Grace, she said, juggling her mug and a stack of medical charts she had to finish before her shift. We can't be late again. I can't find my backpack, Grace cried from her room. It's by the couch. You left it there after doing homework. Maya called back. Her daughter appeared moments later, curls messy, grinning. Mom, you're on the internet again. Maya sighed, brushing a crumb from her uniform. Baby, I'm barely on the phone, let alone the internet. No, really. Grace shoved her tablet into Maya's hands. A video was playing. It showed the diner from last night, the noisy customers, the spilled drinks, and then Maya herself standing up, her voice clear and calm. That's enough. You've had your fun. The video had over 200,000 views. Maya froze, blinking at the comments. She's a hero. This woman deserves the world. Finally, someone stood up. Oh, Lord, she muttered, setting the tablet down. I just wanted to eat dinner. Grace giggled, hopping from foot to foot. You're famous. Can we tell my teacher? Absolutely not, Maya said quickly, though a smile tugged at her lips. We're not those kinds of famous people. Still, as she packed Grace's lunch and double-checked her work bag, she couldn't stop glancing at that video thumbnail. Her face frozen mid-sentence, eyes steady. She'd never thought of herself as brave, just someone who did what needed doing. But the world, it seemed, was starved for kindness. After dropping Grace off at school, Maya drove towards the hospital, her thoughts spinning. The morning traffic was thick, the radio chattering about weather and sports, but her mind stayed on that quiet diner and the girl with trembling hands, Imani. Maya wondered how she was doing after everything. Maybe she should stop by again later, just to check in. At a red light, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. Hello. Ms. Jordan? A man's voice, low, formal. My name is Marcus, assistant to Mr. Richard Wells. I believe you met my colleague earlier today. Maya frowned. I haven't met anyone from... Wait, you mean the man who came to my door? Yes, ma'am. Mr. Wells asked me to confirm your meeting for 11 o'clock at the Magnolia Cafe. I'm still not sure what this is about. I understand, Marcus replied calmly. But I assure you, this is neither a business nor a publicity matter. It's personal. Mr. Wells wishes to speak to you in gratitude. Gratitude? Maya echoed. For what? You'll understand when you meet him. Before she could protest, the call ended. She stared at her phone, torn between suspicion and curiosity. She didn't know any billionaires. The name Richard Wells rang distant bells, maybe from the news or some article about Atlanta's wealthiest philanthropists. By the time she parked at the hospital, she'd decided she'd go, if only to see what all this was about. She texted her supervisor that she'd be late, then spent the next hour finishing paperwork in the break room, her mind half on her patients and half on that black car that had stopped by her apartment. The Magnolia Cafe sat on the edge of Midtown, a quiet, upscale place with ivy crawling up its brick walls and the smell of fresh pastries spilling out the door. Maya arrived at 11 sharp, heart fluttering with nerves. She almost turned back twice, but told herself she had nothing to lose. A hostess led her to a private corner table. Sitting there was a man in his early 50s, silver hair, sharp blue-grey eyes, posture straight as if molded from years of authority. His suit was impeccable, his expression unreadable. He stood when she approached. "Ms. Jordan?" "Yes," Maya said cautiously. "Thank you for coming." His voice was deep, polite, and tired, like someone used to commanding but too weary to care anymore. He gestured to the seat across from him. "Please." She sat, clutching her purse. "You said this was personal." He nodded, folding his hands. "You were at Willow's Diner last night." Maya's stomach tightened. "I was. You defended a young woman who was being mocked. A waitress. Yes, she didn't deserve that." He drew a slow breath. "Her name is Imani Wells. She's my daughter." Maya blinked. Your daughter?" He nodded once, eyes heavy with something deeper than pride. "We haven't spoken in nearly 10 years." The words hung in the air, heavy and strange. Maya felt her pulse quicken. I didn't know. She seemed hurt." "She's been hurt for a long time," Richard said quietly. "I lost her after my wife passed. I remarried too soon, trusted the wrong people, and by the time I realized how much pain she carried, she was gone." He looked away, his jaw tight. "I've been trying to find her ever since." Maya hesitated, not sure what to say. "She's doing her best," she offered gently. "She works hard." "I can imagine," he said. "She always did." He pulled something from his coat pocket, a checkbook. "I want to thank you, Ms. Jordan. You stood up for her when no one else did. Let me repay you." Maya shook her head instantly. "No, sir, I don't want your money." He looked almost startled. "It's not about charity." "Neither was what I did," she said simply. "Sometimes people just need someone to see them." For the first time, Richard's lips twitched into a faint smile. "You remind me of my late wife." She would have said the same thing. They sat in silence for a moment, the clink of dishes and soft jazz filling the space. Finally, he said, "You've met her. You've seen her life. She won't take my calls, my letters, nothing. Would you help me speak to her?" Maya hesitated. "I don't think she'd want me involved." "Perhaps not, but she trusts you." His voice softened. "That's more than I can say for myself." Maya studied him. The billionaire everyone saw in magazines was just a man now, tired, hollow-eyed, aching with regret. "Why now?" she asked. "After all this time?" His voice cracked almost imperceptibly. "Because life has a way of running out when you least expect it." She didn't ask what he meant. There was something in his tone, final, fragile, that told her he was carrying more than guilt. I'll talk to her, she said at last, but I can't promise she'll listen. That's all I ask. He slid his card toward her. Thank you, Miss Jordan. As she tucked the card into her purse, she noticed something. The faint tremor in his hand, the slight wince as he adjusted his cuff. Not weakness exactly, but frailty he tried to hide. I'll let you know what she says, Maya said. When she left the cafe, she stood on the sidewalk for a long moment, watching cars drift by. A billionaire's daughter working nights in a diner, a father desperate to make things right. And somehow, she was caught in between them. She took out her phone, thumb hovering over Imani's number. Then she put it away. Not yet. Not until she could find the right words. That evening, Maya picked Grace up from school. Her daughter chattered non-stop about art class, about how her teacher had shown the diner video and said, "This is what bravery looks like." Maya blushed so hard she nearly dropped the keys. At home, they cooked pasta together, Grace talking between bites. "Mum, what did the fancy man want?" Maya paused. He wanted help finding someone he loves. Grace frowned. Did they get lost? In a way, Maya said softly. Sometimes people get lost even when they know where they are. Later that night, after Grace was asleep, Maya sat by the window with a cup of tea. The city lights shimmered in puddles outside. She thought of Imani's timid smile, of Richard's trembling voice. Two people standing on opposite sides of the same hurt, both too afraid to cross it. She pulled out her phone again and finally sent a message. "Hey, Imani, are you working tomorrow night? I'd like to stop by if you don't mind." The reply came minutes later. "Sure, you okay?" Maya stared at the glowing screen. "I'm fine." She typed, "Just wanted to talk." As she set her phone down, the night deepened. Somewhere across town, in a penthouse high above the city, Richard Wells sat alone in silence, staring at an old photo of his daughter as a little girl, missing teeth, eyes full of joy, and wondering if he'd ever hear her call him Dad again. The next morning dawned clear, sunlight breaking through the clouds that had hung low over the city all week. The streets glistened with leftover rain, and the air smelled fresh, almost new. Maya Jordan woke up earlier than usual, her mind restless from the meeting with the billionaire, Richard Wells, the day before. She hadn't slept much. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face, calm, polite, but haunted by something she couldn't quite name. While Grace ate her cereal at the kitchen table, Maya poured herself coffee and leaned against the counter. "Mom," Grace said between bites, "did the man at the cafe give you a job?" Maya smiled faintly. "No, honey. He wanted to talk about someone I met the other night. The girl at the diner." "That's right." Grace swung her legs under the chair. She was nice. Her smile looked sad, though. Maya nodded, stirring her coffee absently. "Yeah, she's been through a lot." Grace went back to her cereal, humming softly to herself. Maya's heart ached at how easily her daughter saw through people. She was only 9, yet sometimes she spoke with the wisdom of someone much older. Later that morning, after walking Grace to school, Maya decided to drive back to Willow's diner. It was mid-morning, the lull between breakfast and lunch, and the smell of bacon lingered in the air. Imani was behind the counter again, wiping down the surface. When she looked up and saw Maya, her face lit up with genuine warmth. "Maya, hey," she said, her stutter almost gone today. "I was hoping you'd stop by. I wanted to see how you were doing," Maya said, sliding onto a stool. "You seemed shaken up last night." Imani shrugged. "A little, but I'm okay now. People have been nicer today." "That's good to hear." The waitress poured her a cup of coffee. "Your video's still everywhere," she said shyly. I didn't realize it was you at first until my manager showed me. Yeah, that's been strange, Maya said with a small laugh. I'm not used to that kind of attention. They talked for a few minutes, about Grace, about the diner, and then Maya took a quiet breath. Imani, she said softly. Someone asked me to talk to you. Imani frowned. Who? Your father. The young woman froze. Her hand, holding the coffee pot, trembled slightly. He sent you? No, Maya said quickly. He didn't send me. I met him yesterday. He just wanted to understand how you were. He misses you. Imani's eyes darkened. He doesn't miss me. He misses feeling like a good man. That's not what I saw, Maya said gently. He looked broken, Imani, like he's been carrying guilt for years. Imani set the coffee pot down, her jaw tight. Do you know what it's like to grow up in a house where you don't belong? After my mum died, he remarried, and his new wife. She made it clear I was just a reminder of someone she couldn't compete with. He didn't defend me once. Not once. Maya reached across the counter, her voice low and kind. People can change. Sometimes it just takes losing everything to realize what matters. Imani looked down. He lost me a long time ago. Maybe not completely. The girl sighed, rubbing at her eyes. You really think people like him change? Men with more money than heart? I think anyone can change, Maya said. I've seen people come back from worse. For a moment, silence stretched between them, broken only by the low hum of the diner's lights. Then Imani gave a small, tired nod. If he wants to talk, he can come here, but I'm not going to his fancy office or anything. That's fair, Maya said. I'll tell him. Imani hesitated. Why are you doing this? Because someone once helped me when I didn't deserve it, Maya said softly. And because sometimes the right thing to do is help people find their way back to each other. That evening, Maya called Richard Wells. His voice came through the line, quiet and weary. Ms. Jordan. I spoke to her, Maya said. She's willing to see you, but she wants it to be here, at the diner. There was a pause, and she could almost hear his heart catch. She agreed. Yes, Maya said, but you have to come humbly. No cameras, no grand gestures, just you and her. I wouldn't dream of anything else, he said softly. They agreed to meet the next night, after the dinner rush. When Maya arrived at the diner the following evening, the place was nearly empty. Only a few late customers lingered in booths, and the smell of pie filled the air. Imani stood near the register, nervous but composed, twisting a napkin in her hands. You sure about this? Maya asked gently. Imani nodded, though her eyes darted to the door every few seconds. I need to say what I never got to say. At 7 o'clock sharp, the bell above the door jingled. Richard Wells stepped inside, wearing a simple grey coat instead of his usual tailored suit. He looked around slowly until his eyes found hers. Imani froze, breath catching. For a long moment they simply stared at each other. Father and daughter, two people separated by years of pride and silence. Imani, he said finally, his voice trembling. You look well. She swallowed hard. Don't lie. I'm not, he said. I've missed you every day. Her eyes filled, but her tone stayed sharp. You didn't miss me when she called me names. You didn't miss me when I begged you to listen. I was blind, he said softly, and too proud to admit it. Maya stepped back, letting them have space. The room seemed to shrink around them as truth spilled into the open. You married her 2 months after Mum's funeral, Imani whispered. Do you know what that did to me? Richard's shoulders sagged. I know. I thought I was holding the family together, but I was just breaking it more. She crossed her arms, her chin quivering. Why are you here now?" "Because I saw what you've become," he said. "Because someone kind reminded me what love looks like." Imani's gaze flickered toward Maya, then back to him. "Love isn't something you buy, Dad." He nodded. "I know. It's something you fight for, and I didn't fight hard enough." For a moment, everything was still. Then Imani whispered, "I need time." "You can have all the time you need," he said quietly. She turned away, wiping at her tears. "You should go." He looked to Maya, uncertain, then gave a faint nod and walked out into the night. Maya found Imani crying in the back a few minutes later. She sat beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "He's trying," Maya said softly. "I know," Imani whispered. "But it hurts." "Maybe that's what healing feels like at first," Maya said. "It burns before it mends." Imani gave a weak laugh through her tears. "You sound like a preacher." "Just a tired nurse," Maya said with a smile. They sat in silence for a while, the hum of the neon sign outside flickering against the wall. Later that night, as Maya drove home, she looked up at the sky. The clouds had parted again, and stars winked faintly between them. She felt something stir in her chest, a quiet sense that she was exactly where she was supposed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do. Kindness had started all this, but now it was faith that kept her moving forward, faith that broken things could still be made whole. The next day started slow. A soft drizzle misted over Atlanta again, fogging up windows and dulling the shine of the city. Maya Jordan stood at her kitchen sink, washing breakfast dishes while Grace hummed at the table, coloring in a notebook. It was one of those quiet mornings when time seemed to stretch, peaceful but heavy, as if waiting for something to happen. Her mind drifted back to last night. Richard Wells walking out of the diner, his shoulders bowed, and Imani trembling as she fought tears. The air between them had felt thick with old hurt, like smoke that refused to clear. Maya couldn't shake the image of both of them. Two people aching for love, but too afraid to reach across the distance. "Mom," Grace said suddenly, breaking the silence. "Are you thinking about that girl again?" Maya smiled faintly. "You have a sharp memory, don't you?" Grace shrugged. "You just look worried, like when I was sick last winter." "I'm not worried, baby," Maya said, though the lie sat heavy on her tongue. "Just hoping things turn out right." Grace drew another line of color. Sometimes people need help finding the right way. Maya's chest tightened. "You're right, sweetheart." That afternoon, after work, Maya drove back to the diner. It was half full, the smell of fried onions and coffee hanging thick in the air. Imani was taking orders, moving a little slower than usual. Her eyes lifted when she saw Maya, and she managed a weak smile. "You came back," she said quietly. "I wanted to check in." Imani slid into the booth across from her when her tables were served. "It was harder than I thought," she admitted, seeing him again. "I can imagine." Imani traced the edge of a napkin with her finger. "Part of me wanted to hug him. The other part wanted to scream." "That's normal," Maya said softly. "Healing doesn't happen all at once." "I just don't understand why he showed up now," Imani said. "After all these years?" "Maybe because he finally learned how much silence costs," Maya replied. Imani blinked back tears. "He used to tell me stories when I was little, about this hospital he wanted to build for kids who couldn't afford care. I thought it was just something rich people said. But last night, when he looked at me, I think he meant it." Maya nodded. "He did. He's trying to do something good now." The young woman looked up, her voice trembling. "You talked to him after he left?" "Yes, he told me he doesn't want to die with regrets." "Die?" she repeated softly. Maya hesitated, remembering the faint tremor in Richard's hand, the way he'd winced when he shifted in his chair. He didn't say much, but I think he's sick. Imani sat back, stunned. He never told me that. Maybe he didn't want to burden you, Maya said. Tears filled Imani's eyes again. All those years I thought he didn't care, and now… Maya reached across the table and squeezed her hand. You don't have to decide anything today. Just know that he's trying, and he still loves you. Imani nodded slowly, tears spilling silently down her cheeks. Later that night, when Maya got home, she found a note slipped under her door. The handwriting was neat and familiar. Ms. Jordan, thank you for standing between us when I couldn't find the strength myself. You may not see it yet, but you've given me hope. If she agrees, I'd like to see her again. This time not as a man who failed her, but as a father trying to learn how to love again. Richard Wells. Maya folded the note and pressed it to her chest. She wasn't used to being the one who connected worlds. Usually she was the helper in the background, the nurse who patched wounds and moved on. But this was different. She was watching a family try to heal. 2 days passed. Imani didn't answer Maya's messages right away, but on the 3rd day she finally replied. If he really wants to see me, tell him to come to the park on Saturday, 2 p.m. No suits, no bodyguards, just him. Maya smiled and texted Richard the details. His reply came within minutes. I'll be there. Saturday arrived bright and warm, sunlight breaking through the clouds. The park was quiet except for children playing by the swings and a few joggers passing by. Maya and Grace sat on a nearby bench, watching as Richard arrived first. He wore a plain shirt and jeans, still neat, but far from his usual polished look. He looked around, nervous, hands in his pockets. Thank you for arranging this, he said to Maya. I'm not doing anything, she said kindly. You're the one showing up. A few minutes later, Imani appeared, walking slowly down the path. Her hair was loose around her face, and she held a small paper bag, probably leftovers from the diner. When she saw him, she paused, her body stiff. He took a hesitant step forward. Thank you for coming. I almost didn't, she said honestly. I'm glad you did. They walked together toward a quiet bench under a tree. Maya stayed at a respectful distance, holding Grace's hand as the two began to talk. At first it was small things, how she'd been, where she worked, what books she liked now. Then, slowly, the walls began to crack. I thought you stopped loving me, Imani said, her voice barely above a whisper. I never stopped. Richard said, I just didn't know how to show it after your mother died. I thought keeping everything running, the house, the business, was how I could protect you. I was wrong. Tears filled Imani's eyes again. You let her treat me like I was nothing. I know, he said, his own eyes glistening. And I've hated myself for it ever since. A pause hung in the air. Birds chirped in the distance. Grace, sensing the weight of the moment, squeezed her mother's hand quietly. Then Imani asked the question that had burned in her for years. Why now? Richard looked up at the sky for a long moment before answering. Because life doesn't last forever. And because I want you to know, before mine runs out, that you were never the mistake I thought you'd become. You were always my joy. I just lost sight of it. She cried then, softly but openly. He reached out, hesitated, then gently placed a hand on hers. She didn't pull away. Maya felt tears sting her own eyes. She turned away, letting them have privacy, and hugged Grace close. That evening, after the sun dipped below the skyline, Imani sent Maya a short text. Thank you for today. I'm not ready to forgive him yet. but maybe I'm ready to start listening." Maya smiled at the message. It wasn't a miracle yet, but it was the beginning of one. And for the first time in a long while, she felt that maybe her small acts of kindness were not so small after all. The sky was a soft blue that morning, the kind that promised a gentle day. Maya Jordan felt lighter somehow, though she couldn't quite explain why. The air carried the faint scent of rain from the night before, and sunlight spilled warmly through the blinds of her small kitchen. She poured 2 bowls of cereal while Grace sat at the table, swinging her legs and humming to herself. "Mom," Grace said suddenly, "are we going to see that nice lady again? The one from the diner?" "Yes, maybe after work," Maya said, smiling faintly. "She's been having a hard time, so I'm trying to help her and her dad talk again." Grace frowned, stirring her cereal thoughtfully. "Why don't they just say sorry?" Maya paused, then chuckled softly. "If it were that easy, baby, grown-ups would never fight." Grace looked up, puzzled. "But you always tell me sorry makes things better." Maya reached across the table and brushed a crumb from her daughter's cheek. "It does, but sometimes people carry hurt for so long they forget how to say it." Grace thought about that for a moment, then nodded as if it made perfect sense. That afternoon, Maya clocked out from her hospital shift feeling drained. It had been one of those long days full of noise, fluorescent lights, and the quiet heartbreak that nurses learned to carry without showing. On her way home, she decided to stop by Willow's diner. When she walked in, she immediately noticed a man sitting at the counter with his back straight and his posture unmistakably careful. Richard Wells. He wore a simple jacket this time, though everything about him still looked polished. Across the room, Imani was working her shift. She moved between tables with her usual grace, her stutter faint but noticeable when she got nervous. When she saw Maya, she smiled in relief. "Maya, I didn't know you were coming." "Just wanted to grab a coffee," Maya said, returning the smile. But before she could sit, Grace, who had tagged along, clutching her sketchbook, tugged her sleeve. "Mum, can I sit at the counter? I want to draw." "Sure, sweetheart. Stay where I can see you." Grace climbed up onto a stool near Richard, setting down her colored pencils and sketch pad. The old man gave her a polite nod. "Big art project?" he asked kindly. Grace grinned. "Just drawing pancakes. They smell really good here." He chuckled, his eyes softening. "You're right about that." She studied him for a second. "You look familiar. Have I seen you on TV?" "Maybe," he said, amused. "I used to be in the papers a lot, not anymore." Grace tilted her head. "You sound sad." Richard blinked, taken aback. "Do I?" "Yeah," she said seriously. "My mum says when people sound tired in their heart, it's because they need something money can't buy." For a moment, Richard didn't speak. Then he smiled gently. "Your mum sounds like a very wise woman." "She is," Grace said proudly. "She's my favorite person in the world." Maya, watching from a few tables away, caught the tail end of their conversation and smiled. She didn't know exactly what they were talking about, but she could see the way Richard leaned forward slightly, listening with genuine warmth. For the first time, his face looked lighter. As the afternoon drifted on, the diner emptied out. The sound of clinking dishes faded until only the soft hum of the ceiling fan remained. Imani came over to refill Maya's coffee. "He's been coming here almost every day," Imani said quietly. "He just sits there, orders coffee and leaves a big tip. Doesn't say much." "Maybe he just wants to see you from a distance," Maya said gently. Imani sighed. "Maybe. It's weird, though. Seeing him like this. He used to walk into rooms and people would stop talking. Now he looks smaller." Maya took a sip of coffee. "Sometimes life humbles us before it heals us." Imani glanced toward her father, who was still talking softly with Grace. He told me once that money could fix anything. Guess he's learning it can't fix hearts. Maya smiled faintly. He's learning because he has to, and because you're giving him the chance. Imani was quiet for a moment, then said softly, I'm scared, Maya. What if I forgive him, and he disappears again? Maya reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Then at least you'll know you did what was right. Forgiveness isn't about trusting someone else. It's about freeing your own heart. Imani blinked back tears. You really believe that? With everything I have, Maya said. When Maya and Grace got ready to leave, Richard stood to thank them. It was nice meeting you, young lady, he told Grace. You too, Mr. Rich, she said cheerfully, shaking his hand. He chuckled. Mr. Rich, huh? That's new? That's your name now, Grace declared confidently. You smile better when you talk to people, you know. Her innocent words made both adults laugh, but when Richard looked at Maya, there was a warmth in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Thank you for today, he said quietly to Maya. You've done more than you realize. I'm just being kind, Maya said. Sometimes kindness is the most powerful thing in the world, he replied. That night, after Grace had fallen asleep, Maya sat by the window with a cup of tea. Her phone buzzed. A text from Imani. He came back tonight after you left. He didn't say anything, just sat at the counter again. When I asked if he wanted coffee, he smiled and said he just wanted to hear me talk. Maya smiled at the message, tears prickling behind her eyes. That's progress, she texted back. Yeah, Imani replied. For the first time, I think I believe him when he says he's sorry. Maya set her phone down and looked out into the night. The city lights blinked like tiny stars reflected in the puddles below. She thought of Richard, sitting quietly in that diner, learning how to be a father again. She thought of Imani, brave enough to let him try. And she thought of Grace, her little girl with a heart wide enough to touch even the loneliest soul. Maybe this was what Grace really looked like. Maya thought, love that reached past mistakes and into the places that still ached. And for the first time in years, she whispered a prayer not for herself, but for the family she'd stumbled into helping heal. The day chose calm weather for something hard. A soft wind moved through Atlanta, pushing leaves along sidewalks and making the evening air feel new. By late afternoon, thin gold light slid across apartment walls and diner windows. Maya Jordan finished her shift at the hospital, signed the last chart, and checked the time on her phone. It was almost 6. If everything went as planned, the meeting would start a little after 7, once the dinner rush slowed. On her way out, Nurse Kelly called from the break room. You okay, Maya? You look like you're about to run a marathon. Maya laughed under her breath. Just a long day, and a long evening coming. You need me to watch Grace? Kelly offered, already half rising. Maya shook her head. She's going to my neighbor's tonight. Movie, popcorn, the works. I owe Mrs. Donnelly big time. Good, Kelly said, softer now. Whatever you're walking into, remember you don't have to fix anybody. Just be yourself. Maya's smile reached her eyes for a moment. That might be all I've got. She stepped into the cool air and felt it lift her tired spirit a little. Traffic hummed steady along the boulevard. When her phone buzzed, she checked it at a red light. A simple text from Imani. I'm here. Manager said I can close early if I do the floors after. Are you sure about this? Maya typed with her thumb. I'm sure. He'll come. I'll get there before 7. A second message arrived while she waited for the light to change. I'm scared I'll get mad and say things I can't take back. You can take back the anger, Maya wrote. You can't take back the truth. say what's true, and pause when you need to breathe. The light turned green. Breathe, she reminded herself too. By the time she reached Willow's diner, the parking lot was half full. The neon sign hummed. Inside, the air smelled like coffee, butter, and something sweet from the oven. Maybe peach cobbler. The sound of forks against plates and the soft buzz of conversation wrapped around her like a blanket she didn't know she needed. Imani was at the register counting change. She looked up, eyes finding Maya like a lighthouse finds a ship. "You came." "I said I would," Maya said gently. "How are you holding up?" Imani's mouth tried to smile. "Like a stack of plates. I'm not sure what will break me first." "You won't break," Maya said, "and if you do, I'll be right here." Imani nodded. "We'll close the front half after 7:30. Mr. Lawson said I can use the back booth if I mop extra good." "Fair trade," Maya said with a tiny grin. They moved around each other in a quiet rhythm. Maya helped carry extra menus and wipe 2 empty tables while Imani took quick orders. The diner slowly emptied. A father with 2 kids left a mess of napkins shaped like birds. A woman paid with exact change from a jar, whispering to Imani that she'd seen the video and was proud of her. 2 teenage boys tried to flirt and then settled for extra ketchup. The ordinary life of a place like this made the coming moment both stranger and kinder. Big things sometimes needed small rooms. At 7:10, the bell over the door rang. Richard Wells stepped in wearing a plain navy sweater, dark jeans, and a careful expression. He paused as his eyes adjusted to the light, then saw Maya. Relief moved across his face like a slow tide. "Thank you for coming," Maya said, walking to meet him. "I wasn't sure what to wear," he said, a nervous half-smile on his mouth. "It's been a while since I tried to look ordinary." "Ordinary fits you," Maya said. "You don't need a suit for the truth." He nodded. His gaze flicked toward the counter, where Imani worked a moment longer, checking that 2 last orders were right. He didn't call her name. He waited. Maya noticed that. It mattered. They let the final customers finish and paid the checks. Mr. Lawson, the manager, turned the open sign to closed, then pretended not to notice anything. He carried a bucket to the back and whistled as if nothing in life could surprise him. Imani exhaled slow and came around the counter. She stopped 3 steps away from her father. Up close, the years between them felt heavy and loud. Maya stood a few feet back, arms loose at her sides, a steady presence without taking space. "Thank you for meeting me," Richard said, voice low. Imani's chin lifted. "You look different." "I feel different," he said. "That might be closer to the truth." "Different how?" she asked. "Less certain. More sorry." He swallowed. "And more aware of what I've lost." A silence followed, the kind that asks to be filled with something real. Imani nodded towards the back booth near the kitchen pass. "We can talk over there." They slid into the booth, facing each other. The overhead lamp threw a warm circle of light. The rest of the diner sat in soft shadow, salt and pepper shakers like little sentries, napkin dispensers shining in the glow. Maya took a seat in the next booth over, turned sideways so she could be close if needed and far if not. Richard folded his hands on the table and stared at them, as if steadying his breath. "I told myself I would start by apologizing, so I will. I'm sorry, Imani. I'm sorry for leaving you alone in a house that did not love you. I'm sorry for believing peace mattered more than your pain. I'm sorry I didn't listen." She didn't speak at first. Her fingers traced a pattern on the edge of the table. "Do you remember what she called me when I stuttered?" The muscles in his jaw twitched. "Yes. Say it." The word hung there like a dare and a door. "Broken," he said. She called you broken. She said I embarrassed the family. Imani's eyes shone. You stood next to her and said nothing. I did, he said. I told myself I was avoiding a fight. I told myself I was keeping the peace for everyone. I told myself you would toughen up. I told myself 1,000 small lies so I wouldn't have to face one big truth. What truth? Her voice was almost a whisper. That I was a coward in my own home. He looked up. His eyes were wet. I failed you. Imani's breath hitched. I waited for you to pick me. Not the house, not the money. Not her. Me. I know, he said. I know that now. I wish I had known it then. She stared at him, the years folding and unfolding inside her. I left a note the night I ran away. Do you know what it said? He closed his eyes like he could see the past printed inside them. No, I never found a note. I put it in your shoe, she said. A shaky laugh left her lips. You always kept them lined up at the door. I wrote, Dad, if you want me, come find me, please. I can't breathe here. Richard's hand rose to his mouth. A small sound escaped him. I looked at those shoes every morning and never saw it. My God! Imani pressed her palms flat against the table. I waited 3 days at a friend's house before I left the city. 3 days. I told myself you'd come. The diner's quiet held them both like hands under water. Maya watched the way truth was changing the air. Heavy first, then thinner, like a storm pulling away. I did look, Richard whispered. Just not where you were. I sent people. I filed reports. I did everything that let me stay busy, and not one thing that made me brave. Imani blinked slow, as if that answer hurt, but also fit. What changed? He let out a long breath. Losing someone else, he said, and waking up alone in a beautiful, empty life. She studied him. I heard she died. He nodded. I spent a year in a house where my breath was the loudest sound. You learn what kind of man you are in a room like that. Imani's voice softened without her meaning it to. What kind of man are you now? I don't know yet, he said. I know I want to be a father again before I die, if you'll let me try. The word die flickered like a warning light, but Imani didn't grab it yet. She placed a napkin under her fingers, aligning its edges. You always thought money solved things, she said. It never touched the places I bled. I know, he said. If there were a receipt I could sign to buy your trust back, I'd burn it rather than insult you. That made a tiny, unwilling smile twitch at the corner of her mouth. You always were dramatic. He smiled back, fragile but true. Comes with the job. They both breathed for a few seconds. In the kitchen pass, a timer dinged, and no one moved to answer it. Mr. Lawson had slipped to the back, walking slow on purpose, giving them space. Imani's shoulders lowered, as if letting some armor fall. I don't want your money, she said, but I want you to know about my life, not the parts you can brag about, the normal parts. I want you to ask how my day was and wait for the answer. I can do that, he said. Can you? She challenged. Because sometimes my day is boring, or sad, or small. I can do boring, he said, and his smile widened a fraction. I can sit in a diner and learn to love small. That time, she didn't fight the smile. I saw you at the counter, with a little girl. She called you Mr. Rich. She is a fierce judge of character, he said, and she thinks I should smile more. She's right, Imani said softly. Maya made a quiet note to herself. The gentlest bridges are often built from ordinary boards, simple words, small grins, plain promises that fit in a day. Imani toyed with the napkin again. There's more I need to say, she whispered, and I don't know how to make it sound kind. I don't need kind, he said. I need honest. She lifted her chin. When Mom died, you disappeared, even when you were in the room. You filled the house with strangers and quiet rules. You looked right through me like I belonged to the past. I stopped singing because no one listened. I stopped talking because my voice made people sigh. I started eating alone in a pantry because the table was too loud with someone else's hate. Richard's hands shook. He did not reach for her. He let the words land where they needed. I am sorry, he said again, but it sounded bigger this time, like it came from the deepest part of him. I know, she said, and her voice cracked. I also know sorry can be a door or a mirror. A door opens. A mirror keeps looking at itself. I want a door, he said. She stared at him, searching. Then you'll have to walk through it slowly, and I'm not going to hold it open every time. I wouldn't ask you to, he said. They were quiet again. The quiet felt different now, less like a cliff and more like a field where two people might learn to stand. Maya slid from her booth and came to their table. She did not sit. She rested a light hand against the wood and spoke low. Do you want something simple? Tea? Water? Food helps hard talk. Imani laughed, a sound wet with tears. I could eat. Same, Richard admitted, as if eating in a diner at night was something holy he'd forgotten. Maya brought 2 mugs and a plate of hot biscuits she had asked Mr. Lawson to warm. She set down honey and butter. Start here, she said softly, and went back to her booth. Imani broke a biscuit and passed half across the table. You used to tell me to share. I did, he said, accepting it with careful hands. You were better at it than I was. They ate like people who hadn't eaten together in a decade. Honey made their fingers sticky. Butter softened into little lakes on the bread. Steam rose and fogged the edge of the mug. Their talk stayed small for a while, as if the heat smoothed the sharpest parts. Imani asked, Do you still go to the office at 5 in the morning? Not anymore, he said. These days I wake up at 4 and try to learn how not to run from silence. That sounds hard. It is, he said. But it's teaching me how to hear again. She picked at a crumb. Did you know I still have Mum's apron? He blinked. No, I thought it was lost. I wear it on Sundays, she said. Even when I don't cook. It smells like soap now, but if I close my eyes I can still find the cinnamon. I would like to smell that memory, he said, if you ever let me. Her throat moved as she swallowed emotion. Maybe one day. They finished the biscuits. The clock over the kitchen door clicked toward 8:30. The street outside thinned to quiet, passing cars moving like fish in a dark river. Imani wiped her fingers and drew a breath. I need to say one last thing. Then I'm done for tonight. Take your time, he said. I might forgive you. She began, each word set down like a careful step. But I can't forget by force. You can't push me to be healed, even if you're changing. And I won't lie to make this neat. He nodded once. No neat lies. If we do this, she said, we do it slow. Maybe that means coffee once a week. Maybe it means nothing for a while if I have a bad day. I need you to understand that I want to try, but trying will hurt. His answer came without a pause. I will take every hurt that comes with trying over the emptiness that comes with quitting. Her eyes filled again. She didn't wipe them this time. Okay, she whispered. Then we'll try. The word try hung there like a thin bridge. Not grand, not glorious. Enough. Maya stood again, sensing the moment had settled for now. Do you want me to lock up the front while you finish? Mr. Lawson's pretending to reorganize toothpicks. In the back. Imani laughed through a sniff. He's very brave with toothpicks. I'll handle the lights, Maya said, smiling. She closed 3 of the blinds and left one half open, so the street's soft light still poured across the floor. She wiped 2 crumbs from the counter and turned off the neon sign. The diner fell into a kind of hush that felt like bedtime for a room. When she came back, she found Imani standing. "I think that's all I have tonight." The younger woman said, "If I keep going, I'll say things the wrong way." "That's wisdom," Maya said. "Stop while your heart is still telling the truth kindly." Richard rose too, and the movement seemed to take him effort. Not dramatic effort, just the steady strain of a body that had learned it was human after all. He adjusted his sweater and steadied a hand against the booth, the gesture so small most people would miss it. Maya didn't. "Thank you," he said to Imani, "for the biscuits, for your words, for letting me sit across from you at all." Imani nodded, emotions too close to the surface for more talk. "I'll text you. Not tonight, but I will. I'll keep my phone close," he said. She stepped back and then surprised them both by leaning in. The hug lasted no more than a heartbeat. It was awkward and quick and perfect. When they pulled apart, both were breathing like they'd run a short race. "I need to mop," Imani said, half laughing, half crying. "Then I need to get out of your way," Richard answered. They walked together toward the door. Maya unlocked it long enough to let him out. The night air flowed in, cool and clean, making the hair on her arms rise. "Do you need a ride?" she asked quietly. "I came with the driver," he said, and his half-smile returned. "But I wouldn't mind walking to the corner." "I'll go with you," Maya said. "I'll be right back, Imani. Holler if you need help with the mop." "Go," Imani called from the back, voice warmed by something gentler now. "I'm okay." Maya stepped into the night beside Richard. They walked along the quiet sidewalk in easy silence, their breaths little clouds in the cooling air. Streetlights painted the pavement in pale circles. Somewhere a dog barked. A bus sighed at a stop and went on. At the corner, Richard stopped. He leaned one shoulder against the brick like a man who finally let himself feel tired in public. "You did well," Maya said softly. "She did better," he answered. "You listened," Maya said. "That's rarer than people think." He nodded. For a moment his face went still, like he was deciding if he should choose truth or disguise. He chose truth. "I'm not strong," he said. "Not the way I used to present. I get dizzy sometimes. The doctors tell me to rest more. I'm learning how to obey." Maya's eyes traced the lines beside his mouth, the faint tremor at his fingertip. "I noticed," she said, not unkind. "You stood up slow." He chuckled once. "So much for dignity. Dignity is just truth without the costume," she said. He looked at her with a gratitude that felt older than the two of them. "If I had met you 20 years ago, I might have kept my family. I'm glad I met you now, though. I think now is the only time I could hear you. Now is when it matters," Maya said. A black sedan slid to the curb. The driver stepped out and opened the back door. Richard didn't move yet. He held out his hand. Maya shook it. His grip was warm and careful. "Thank you for standing in the gap," he said. "Most people run from gaps." "I'm not brave," she said. He tilted his head. "You keep doing brave things for a person who isn't brave." She smiled and let the line pass without argument. "Text me when you get home, and eat something that isn't biscuits." "I'll try," he said. "Good night, Ms. Jordan." "Good night, Mr. Wells." He climbed into the car. It pulled away with a soft sound. Maya watched the taillights fade, then turned back toward the diner. The night felt lighter than it had when she walked out. Big problems were still big. But something had turned. It wasn't victory. It was direction. Inside, she found Imani with the mop bucket, hair pulled into a quick knot, sleeves rolled. "How was your walk?" Imani asked, eyes shining with leftover tears. "Good," Maya said, taking the mop from her. "He'll sleep tonight." "I might too," Imani whispered, for the first time in a while. They mopped side by side. Soap swirled in little galaxies on the tile. Their shoes squeaked. They worked in a rhythm that felt like prayer. Push, pull, rinse. The floor gave back a soft shine. When they finished, Maya helped stack 2 chairs and turned off the last light, except the one over the register. Imani leaned against the counter, looking around the quiet room. "Tomorrow will be ordinary again," she said. "Ordinary is where the good grows." Maya answered. Imani took a long breath and let it out slow. "I told him I'd text. I will. Not tonight, but soon." Maya squeezed her shoulder. "That's enough for today." They stepped to the door together. Outside, the street wore its usual night skin. A cat slipped between cars. Somewhere, music drifted from a second-floor window, a slow song from another year. "Thank you," Imani said, turning to her, "for staying, for not pushing, for handing me a biscuit instead of a speech." Maya laughed. "Food first, sermons later." Imani smiled, and this time it reached her whole face. "Tell Grace I'll bring her pancakes tomorrow." "I will," Maya said. They hugged, gentle and lingering. Then Maya walked to her car and sat for a moment with her hands around the steering wheel, letting the quiet flood in. She felt like someone who had carried a heavy bucket across a field and set it down without spilling. Her arms still shook, but the load was off the ground. Before starting the engine, she checked her phone. A new message from an unknown number waited. "Home safe. Thank you for the light you carry into dark rooms." Maya smiled at the screen, then whispered a small thank you to the night. She drove home by the slow streets, passing houses where televisions flickered and porches held pairs of shoes. At Mrs. Donnelly's, she picked up a sleepy Grace smelling like buttered popcorn, whispered promises of pancakes, and tucked her into bed 10 minutes later. When the apartment finally settled into its own hush, Maya stood at the window and watched the city breathe. Somewhere in that wide map of lights, a father stared at his ceiling with hope that didn't hurt as much. Somewhere a daughter washed honey from her hands and decided to make room for morning. Maya pressed her palm to the glass, feeling the cool answer her warmth. She did not ask for guarantees. She did not bargain with the sky. She just gave thanks for the night that let truth sit at a small table and be fed. Tomorrow would come with new work and old aches. But tonight had given them a door. They had opened it a few inches. That was enough. She turned off the lamp. The room went soft and dark. In the quiet, she felt the shape of a prayer in her chest. Let them keep choosing the slow kind of love, the kind that listens, the kind that stays. And then she slept. Morning came slow, like a shy guest at the door. The sky was pale and thin, and the air felt cool against the windows of the small apartment. Maya woke before her alarm, the good tired of a day well used still in her bones. She lay still for a moment and listened. Grace breathed steady in the next room. Pipes clicked in the wall. Somewhere outside, a bus sighed and rolled past like a big animal in the dark. It was Saturday, the kind that holds chores and laundry and hope. She made coffee and set bread in the toaster. When the slices popped up, she buttered them for Grace and drizzled a little honey on her own. As the kettle hummed, she checked her phone. A message from Richard waited, sent close to midnight. "Thank you again for tonight. I will move slow. I will listen." Another from Imani. "I fell asleep crying, but my chest feels lighter. Thank you." Maya smiled at both. She sent back 2 short replies and tucked the phone away. Grace shuffled out with her blanket around her shoulders and climbed onto a chair like a sleepy queen. "Are we getting pancakes today?" Grace asked. "Tomorrow," Maya said. "Imani promised. Today we have toast and fruit and a list of things to clean." Grace groaned and laughed at the same time. "You always make lists, Mom." "They keep us honest," Maya said. "They keep the house from falling down." After breakfast, they put on music that sounded like sunshine, and the apartment began to wake. Sheets went into the wash, shoes lined up by the door. Grace dusted the bookshelf with great care, stopping to read 3 pages of a comic book when she thought her mother was not looking. Around 10, Maya's phone buzzed again. It was Nurse Kelly. "Can you take a swing shift this afternoon? We're short 2 people." Maya looked at the clock. She did not want to go back so soon, but the Bills did not care about want. She texted back, "I'll be there by 12:30. She arranged with Mrs. Donnelly for Grace to stay after lunch. By noon, they had the house neat and the laundry folded into friendly stacks. Grace hugged her and promised to practice spelling words with the old woman upstairs. At the hospital, the air smelled like lemon cleaner and warm plastic. The afternoon pressed hard. A fevered toddler cried and then slept. A teenager tried to be brave and learned he did not have to be. A grandfather told Maya that he had loved the same woman for 58 years and still smiled when she entered a room. The stories moved over her like gentle tide and sometimes like storm. She worked the way she always worked, steady hands, soft voice, eyes that noticed small pains before they grew loud. During a short break, she ate a banana at the end of the quiet hall and checked her phone again. A new email blinked from the hospital fund office. The subject line said, "Anonymous gift applied to family ward." She tapped it open. The message was short and direct. Several children with overdue balances would see their accounts cleared. A promise of recurring support was included for the next 6 months. There was no name, only a note. For the children nobody sees. Maya stared at the screen until the words turned to a blur. She thought of Richard sitting at the counter, hands wrapped around a mug he barely touched. She thought of the way he had spoken about learning to hear again. It felt like a thread ran from that booth to this email. She did not pull the thread. She knew the truth without needing to make it louder. Her break ended. She washed her hands and went back to the floor. The hours stacked up like books. At 5, a thunderstorm crawled over the city, slow and stubborn. Rain striped the windows. The lights in the hall flickered and held. When the shift finally eased, she signed her last note, told Nurse Kelly to go get some rest, and walked out into the wet evening. The air was clean and sweet, the way air sometimes is after rain has argued with the sky. She picked up Grace from Mrs. Donnelly's. The older woman had curled the girl's hair into a crown of soft spirals and fed her a plate of noodles and peas. "She read to me," Mrs. Donnelly said proudly. 3 chapters, with voices. Grace beamed. "I made the dragon sound like a trumpet." "You did," the old woman agreed, laughing. "Loud and brave. It shook the windows and my slippers." They thanked her and headed home, walking the slow stairs with a bag of cookies the neighbor insisted they take. In the apartment, Grace spread crayons and asked if she could draw at the table. Maya said, yes, brewed mint tea, and let her shoulders drop. She messaged Imani to check on her. The reply came fast. "I'm okay. Tired. I keep remembering his face when I said door not mirror. He didn't argue. That helped." Maya typed back, "Small steps. Biscuits again tomorrow. Pancakes for Grace." A pause, then another message. He asked if he could stop by after close. I said maybe. I think I want you there if he does. "I'll come," Maya wrote. "Text me when you know." The next day brought bright sun and the soft hum of Sunday. They went to church in the morning, the small brick one with the blue doors and the choir that sang like warm honey. During the quiet part, Maya closed her eyes and whispered a tiny prayer for a father, a daughter, and all the rooms they would have to walk through. She prayed for her own heart, too, that it would keep being steady in places where other hearts were shaking. After church, they stopped by the grocery store. Grace picked strawberries and chased a sample lady for a cube of cheese. Back home, they ate on the couch and watched a nature show about whales. They sing to each other. Grace said, eyes wide. They can hear from far away. Maybe that is what love does, Maya said. It sings so the people far away can find their way back. In the afternoon, Maya's phone buzzed again. It was Richard this time. May I stop by the diner tonight near closing? I will stay at the counter unless invited. The words were formal and plain. She smiled at the care inside them. She texted Imani. The answer came back almost right away. Okay. Evening slipped in easy. They arrived at the diner a little after 7. The place was livelier than usual for a Sunday, full of soft talk and the clatter of forks. Imani greeted them with a tired grin and a plate already ordered for Grace. Pancakes with extra syrup, she announced. I keep my promises. Grace clapped like applause in a small theater. I knew you would. They ate together while the night did its work. Around 8, the crowd thinned. The bell over the door rang, and Richard entered in a rain jacket and cap. He nodded to Maya and offered a small, unsure wave toward Imani, who answered with a nod of her own. He took a seat at the far end of the counter like a quiet student who hoped the class would go well. Imani whispered to Maya, I can do this. You can, Maya said. Imani poured him coffee, then stood a respectable step away. We're open for another 30, she said. Then I close. I'll be here, he answered. Take your time. The minutes folded gently. A couple in the corner held hands over pie. A delivery driver picked up 2 bags and promised to bring his mother next time. Mr. Lawson pretended to adjust the chalkboard specials and exhaled like he had run a race he never left the building to run. When the clock hit 8:30, Imani flipped the sign to closed and turned off one set of lights. The room felt warmer, with the corners dim. She walked to the counter and stood across from her father. I had a dream last night, she said, surprising herself with the words. Mom was baking. The oven light made her face look like a candle. She handed me a spoon and told me to taste. It was just sugar, but it felt like a feast. Richard's throat worked. I can see that, he said softly. She did that with me, too. She said life is heavy. Sugar is a way to carry joy in the mouth. Imani's eyes shone. I forgot that line. I think I wanted to forget her because remembering hurt too much. It hurts either way, he said, but one way brings her close. Imani nodded. I want her close. She took a breath. I also want to know something. The foundation, the gifts. Are you doing all that because you're sorry about me? He looked at the coffee like it might give him the words. I am sorry about you, he said. But the giving started before you let me back in the room. It started the night I realized my house was full of things and empty of voices. I could not stand the quiet. So I asked a simple question. Who is hungry because I guarded the wrong doors? Imani let out a small sound that was half cry and half laugh. You and your doors. I am trying to learn which ones should be open, he said. I am slow at it, but I am learning. Maya watched them from a booth with Grace curled against her side, listening the way a child listens when she knows not to speak. The scene looked ordinary. 2 people, and a counter and cups. But the air bristled with meaning the way wool holds static. It was tender. It was also brave. Imani leaned forward. The hospital sent a message today. Anonymous gift. Family ward. That you? He hesitated, then nodded once. I don't want a plaque. I don't care about plaques, she said. I care that kids can go home. They will, he said. And if I can help more, I will. Silence settled again, but this time it felt like a quilt rather than a wall. Imani reached for a napkin and began to fold it into a small boat. When she finished, she set it between them. For the days that flood, she said. He took the napkin boat and held it like something rare. I will keep this, he said, in my wallet next to your picture, if you let me have a picture. She nodded, cheeks wet now. I will bring one tomorrow. Maya exhaled, only then noticing she had held her breath. Grace squeezed her hand and whispered, Whales can hear across oceans. Maya kissed the top of her head. Before they left, Imani packed pancakes for Grace in a small box tied with string. She put a biscuit in there too, like a secret. Maya hugged her and promised to text in the morning. Richard waited by the door while they said their goodnights. When Maya passed him, he spoke low. I am trying not to say too much, he said. I am trying to let her lead. You're doing fine, Maya said. Keep your steps small and steady. He nodded. That I can do. The next 3 days moved like a patient river. Monday was busy at the hospital. Tuesday smelled like rain again. Wednesday brought a cool wind and a cloudless sky. In the quiet spaces, small things grew. Richard came to the diner each evening and sat in the same spot. Sometimes he and Imani spoke. Sometimes he just listened while she worked. He learned the names of 2 regulars and the sound of the bell that meant an order was ready. He learned he liked the vegetable soup and that the cook whistled blues when no one was around. On Thursday, Imani took her break and sat with Maya. He told me he sold part of his company. She said, eyes wide like she could not believe the sentence even as she spoke it. He said he didn't need that much, and that time was the only thing he couldn't buy. He said he wanted to spend the rest of it on people. How did that make you feel? Maya asked. Scared, Imani said. Hopeful, also mad, which surprised me. I keep thinking, why didn't he choose me sooner? But then I think, I'm glad he is choosing now, and both things live in the same room and don't fight. They can share a room, Maya said. Feelings can be good roommates when they stop trying to throw each other out. Imani laughed. You say the strangest things that make too much sense. Friday came with bright air and a sky so blue it looked washed. Maya worked the morning shift and left at 2. She bought flowers from a street cart and set them in a jar on her kitchen table because the room needed something alive. Grace came home with a paper crown and a stamp on her hand that said, Great Reader. They danced in the kitchen for no reason. At 5, Maya put a casserole in the oven and texted Imani. We can bring dinner to you at closing if you're hungry. Imani sent 3 heart emojis and a yes. They ate early and saved some to go. At 7:30 they reached the diner. The evening crowd was gentle and light. A radio in the kitchen played old soul music. Mr. Lawson hummed off-key. Richard sat at the counter, and this time he turned before anyone spoke, like he could feel them come in. Good evening, he said, a little smile there already. You bring good weather. Grace pointed to the window. It's because the sky finally cleaned its face. Yes, he said. That must be it. At 8, the last table left. Imani locked the door and flipped half the lights. I can spare 15, she told her father. Then I need to finish the books and the floor. I'll work with your time, he said. They sat at the counter with the casserole in front of them. Maya served small portions on diner plates. Richard took 2 bites and made a surprised sound. This is very good. It's humble food, Maya said. It knows its job and does it. Imani ate and looked suddenly shy. "I brought something," she said, reaching into her bag. She laid an old photograph on the counter. It showed a little girl with gap teeth and wild curls sitting on a kitchen counter, wearing an apron 2 sizes too big. A man stood behind her with flour on his nose. Both were laughing with their whole faces. Richard touched the corner of the picture like it might vanish. "I remember that day," he said, voice rough. "We burned the first batch and ate them anyway." "Mom said burned pancakes count as an adventure," Imani answered. "She said we were brave eaters." "We were," he said. "We will be again." They looked at each other and did not hide from the look. Maya felt the room change in that soft, almost unseen way. Rooms change when people finally let their eyes tell the truth. "Can I keep this?" he asked. "I brought 2, she said. "One for you, one for the diner wall." Mr. Lawson, who had drifted near without meaning to, blurted, "You can put it next to the pie contest ribbon." Then he blushed, realized he had spoken, and carried a stack of menus away with great urgency. Imani smiled. "I'll hang it tomorrow." Maya checked the time. "We should go. We're making you late for the mop." "I don't mind," Imani said. She stood and touched her father's arm, brief as a blink. "Thank you for coming every day." "Thank you for letting me," he said. They packed up the leftover casserole. Grace waved at the picture on the counter like it was a person, and then waved at Richard the same way. He laughed and waved back, a man learning a new language made of small signs and simple joy. Outside, the air was crisp. The moon looked cut from clean paper. As they walked to the car, Maya felt a tiny knot loosen in her chest. Things were not fixed. They were tended. That was enough for a Friday night. Back home, she tucked Grace into bed with a story. When the apartment finally went quiet, her phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Richard lit the screen. "I had tests this morning. The doctor wants to adjust my medicines. I am fine, but I will move slower for a while. Please do not tell Imani unless I need help. I want to keep our time simple." Maya stared at the words. The knot in her chest tightened again. She typed and erased a response twice. Then she wrote, "Thank you for telling me. I will respect your wish. Please promise me you will call if you feel weak." A moment later, "I promise." She set the phone down and leaned her forehead against the cool cabinet door. She did not like keeping a secret that brushed this close to fear. But she understood. He wanted their talks to be about life, not sickness. He wanted to be a father, not a patient. For now, she would hold the line he asked her to hold and watch him from the edges, ready to step in if the ground tilted. She poured a glass of water, sipped, and stood by the window. The city blinked back at her, soft and steady. Somewhere, Imani was finishing the floor. Somewhere, Richard was sitting with the old photograph in his hands. Somewhere, the future waited like a room with a light turned on but a door that had not yet been opened. Maya closed her eyes and let the day roll through her one last time. Then she whispered into the quiet kitchen, Keep them both." And the night, kind as it could be, said nothing, but seemed to listen. Friday night carried a hard rain. It tapped the diner windows and slid down the glass in silver lines. Inside, the lights gave a warm glow, and the room smelled like coffee, pie, and wet coats. Maya walked in with Grace just after 7. Imani waved from the counter, a little smile on her tired face. The day had been long, but she seemed steady. Richard arrived a few minutes later in a dark jacket and cap. He shook rain from his sleeves and gave a careful nod. He looked thinner than the week before, but his eyes were gentle. He took his usual seat at the end of the counter, where the light fell soft and kind. Business was busy, then slow, then busy again. Dishes clinked. The bell dinged. Mr. Lawson wrote chicken pot pie on the chalkboard and pretended not to watch them all. Around 8, the storm grew louder. Wind rattled the door. Imani poured coffee for Richard and wiped a ring on the counter with a small napkin boat she had folded the night before. "Still sailing?" he asked, smiling. "Still sailing," she said. Maya sat with Grace in a corner booth. Grace drew a whale with a tiny heart on its side. "So they can hear each other," she said. Maya kissed her hair and told her it was perfect. Then it happened. It was quick and slow at the same time. Richard reached for his cup, missed, and pressed his hand to his chest. His face went pale and far away. The cup tipped and rolled. Coffee ran toward the edge like a dark river. Imani's eyes widened. "Dad?" He slid from the stool. Maya flew from the booth. "Call 911!" she shouted. She knelt beside him, checked his airway, his pulse, his breathing. The storm roared against the windows. The room shrank to the size of a heartbeat. "Richard, can you hear me?" she asked. No answer. She began compressions, steady and sure, counting under her breath. Imani stood frozen, hands to her mouth, then grabbed the phone with shaking fingers and spoke to the dispatcher through tears. Mr. Lawson locked the door and cleared the floor. A couple prayed out loud. Grace held Maya's bag and did not cry, though her eyes shone. Sirens wailed in the wet night. The crew rushed in with bright jackets and a stretcher. Maya gave a clear report, her voice calm from years of practice. They worked together like parts of one body. The monitor beeped. An oxygen mask hissed. They lifted him with care and moved fast. "I'm riding with him," Maya said. "Please," Imani whispered. "Please don't let him die." Maya squeezed her hand. "We're not done fighting." The ambulance doors closed. Rain hammered the roof. Lights painted the storm red and white as they sped through the streets. Maya watched the numbers, the lines, the rise and fall of his chest. She prayed under her breath, simple words, steady as the road. At the hospital, the team met them at the bay. Doors swung. Bright light flooded every corner. He disappeared behind curtains. Forms were signed. Orders flew. The world became a clean, urgent blur. Imani arrived with Grace and Mr. Lawson 20 minutes later, soaked and shaking. When she saw Maya in the hall, something broke. Fear turned to anger. "This is your fault," she cried. "You pushed him. You made me meet him. You made this happen." Maya took the hit without a shield. "I hear you," she said softly. She stayed. Morning came pale and cold, the kind that made hospital windows look like mirrors. Maya sat in the waiting room, her scrubs wrinkled, her hair loose from its tie. She had been there all night. The clock hands moved slow, and every sound, footsteps, whispers, the distant ring of a phone, seemed too loud. When the door opened, Dr. Patel stepped in. His calm face gave Maya something solid to hold on to. "He's stable," he said. "It was a heart attack, but we got to him in time. He's awake and asking for you both." Maya pressed a hand to her mouth, tears spilling fast and silent. "Thank God." A few minutes later, Imani entered the hallway, red-eyed and trembling. Her voice was small. "He's really okay?" Maya nodded. "He wants to see you." They walked together toward the recovery room. Machines hummed softly beside Richard's bed, their green lines steady and sure. He looked frail but alive, his skin pale, his eyes clear and gentle. When he saw them, a tired smile crossed his face. "You too," he whispered. "The best sight I could wake up to." Imani hesitated at the foot of the bed. "You scared me," she said, voice shaking. "I scared myself," he answered, forcing a weak chuckle. "Guess I'm not as strong as I pretend." Maya stepped back, letting the moment belong to them. Imani moved closer and took her father's hand. "Don't do that again," she said through tears. "Don't leave without saying goodbye. I'm not going anywhere." He promised. Not yet. For the first time, she didn't flinch when he squeezed her fingers. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was sacred, full of things too big for words. After a moment, Richard turned to Maya. "You saved my life," he said. She shook her head. "God did that. I just did my job." He smiled faintly. "Then I thank God for you." Hours passed quietly. Grace arrived with Mrs. Donnelly, holding flowers from the apartment balcony. "They're small, but they're from our best pot," Grace said proudly. Richard laughed softly, the sound thin but true. As evening neared, the nurse helped him sit up a little. Imani fed him soup, steadying the spoon with care. They talked about nothing and everything. About rain, pancakes, and the photo she'd given him. When he grew tired, she tucked the blanket around him the same way Maya did for Grace. Before leaving, Maya stood by the door. "He'll need rest," she said gently, "but he'll heal better if he's not alone." Imani nodded. "I'm not leaving him again." That night, Maya took Grace home. The city lights blurred through the car window, and the hum of the tires sounded like a heartbeat. Grace leaned her head on her mother's shoulder and whispered, "He's going to be okay, right?" "Yes," Maya said softly. "He's finally where he's supposed to be." Back at the hospital, Richard lay awake in the dim light, watching Imani doze in a chair beside him. Her hand rested on his arm. For the first time in years, he felt peace. Not the silence of guilt, but the calm of being forgiven. He closed his eyes and whispered, "Thank you for another chance." Outside, the rain had stopped. A thin line of dawn touched the window, soft and golden, promising that the hardest night had passed. The world outside the hospital was washed clean by dawn. The parking lot glistened from the night's rain, and the rising sun laid gold stripes across the wet pavement. Inside, everything smelled faintly of coffee, disinfectant, and the promise of another day. Maya walked through the corridor holding 2 cups, one for herself and one for Imani, her shoes whispering against the tile. When she entered the room, Richard was awake. He looked fragile, but peaceful, sitting up against a mound of pillows. Imani was asleep in the chair beside him, her head leaning against the rail, her hand still resting on his arm. "She stayed all night," Maya whispered. Richard smiled faintly. "I told her to go home. She said fathers shouldn't be left alone anymore." "That sounds like her," Maya said softly, handing him the cup. He took a small sip, his hands trembling slightly. "I'll never repay what you've done," he said. "You don't have to," Maya replied. "Just live better. That's payment enough." He looked out the window, where sunlight spread like a quiet blessing over the city. "You know," he murmured, "I used to think love meant fixing everything. Turns out it just means staying long enough to listen." Before Maya could answer, Imani stirred. Her eyes blinked open, and when she saw him sitting up, color rushed to her cheeks. "You scared me again," she said, trying to sound annoyed but failing. "I'm sorry," he said, "but I'm glad you stayed." She took the coffee Maya handed her and smiled faintly. "Next time you scare me, I'm charging you for stress." He chuckled, and the sound filled the room like light. Later that morning, Grace came with Mrs. Donnelly. She carried a small card covered in stickers. "This is for you, Mr. Rich," she said proudly. "It says, 'Get well soon,' but I drew a whale too, because whales can hear. Love far away." Richard's eyes misted. "I think I heard it already," he said, "right before I woke up." Grace grinned, and Imani hugged her tight. "You're magic." Imani whispered. "Don't ever stop being kind." By afternoon, Richard's doctor arrived with good news. His condition was serious but manageable. He would need rest, medication, and less stress, but he had a strong chance to recover fully. Relief flooded the room. Imani wiped at her eyes. Maya squeezed her shoulder. Grace clapped like she'd just heard the best story ending ever. 2 days later, Richard was released. The diner crew threw a small celebration. Nothing fancy, just balloons, laughter, and the smell of fresh biscuits. Richard sat at the counter beside Imani, his arm steady around her shoulder. Maya and Grace sat opposite, enjoying pie. "I was thinking," Richard began, his tone humble but sure, "about starting something small. A foundation for kids who can't afford medical care. I'd like to name it after someone who reminds me that kindness is the real wealth." Imani frowned slightly. "Who?" He looked at Maya. "The Jordan Fund." Maya nearly dropped her fork. "Richard, no." He smiled. "Yes, you showed me what love looks like when it's brave enough to be ordinary. Let me honor that." Tears blurred her vision. "If it helps people, that's all that matters." Grace tugged Maya's sleeve. "Does that mean more pancakes for everyone?" "Exactly," Richard said with a laugh. The laughter rolled through the diner, gentle and bright. It wasn't loud, but it carried, like a song sung under breath but meant to be heard. That night, when the crowd thinned and the lights dimmed, Maya stepped outside. The air smelled of rain and sugar. Imani and Richard were locking up behind her, still talking quietly. Grace twirled in a puddle, her reflection spinning with her. Maya looked up at the sky, stars faint but steady above the clouds. She thought about every broken thing that had been mended. Not perfectly, but enough to hold. She thought about the people who had once been strangers and were now something like family. Sometimes, she realized, God didn't send miracles wrapped in thunder or fire. Sometimes he sent them wearing aprons, carrying coffee, or whispering forgiveness across a diner counter. Richard stepped beside her, breathing the cool night air. "You changed my life," he said simply. Maya smiled. "You changed your own. I just reminded you where to start." He nodded, eyes shining. "Then I guess we both found Grace." She looked toward the diner window, where Imani was laughing with Grace over spilled sprinkles. "No," Maya said softly. "Grace found us first." The wind moved gently through the street, carrying their laughter into the night. Above them, the clouds broke open to reveal a single bright star, steady, patient, and new. Thanks for tuning in. These stories remind us that life is more than headlines. It's about heartlines. Subscribe if you want more moments that make you pause, feel, and reflect.